So, as we come back to our rooms and our gathering here, I see we have a good number of people on, and I'm going to ask people to give us, as we start, some indication of where you are at your organization with your own record keeping and bookkeeping. And so what I mean by that is, do you have questions? And also, if you could tell us, do you have a bookkeeping system? So if you do, then just indicate QuickBooks, Sage, whatever it might be. If you don't, that's okay. And so if you can tell us how you track, maybe it's a spreadsheet, maybe it's your checkbook register. So just to give Stephanie and I, who are going to do this training, a little context for you. So that would be our starting point. Just introduce yourself, your name and your organization, and what you use for tracking. And then if you have a question to start with, go ahead and add the question in. And just to make it go quick, I'm going to go around my screen. And if you'd rather pass, just say pass. That's okay too. So the first one on my screen is Sally. Sally, would you share with us?
Sure. I'm gonna put on my Glenn hat.
Great.
Rather than my Federation of Monroe County Environmentalist hat.
Gotcha.
We're right now, because we're in that discerning process of discerning whether to be, first of all, our strategic plan, and also whether to become a registered not-for-profit and incorporated. We are tracking in Excel. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of tracking now because we have memberships, and we have received a few grants and have spent it almost entirely on the conference in Niagara Falls last September. So right. Yeah, so it's one of our experienced one of the people who has experience with his own not-for-profit organization is the one who is tracking it.
Gotcha.
So because a lot of our members are groups.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sally. And next we'll go to Gwen, please, if you'd like to share.
Yes, we have, we're using a spreadsheet. Our accountant, and upping our level of bookkeeping, our accountant had given us a spreadsheet, and we've used it for a few years. And now we have purchased QuickBooks. And that's as far as I've gotten with QuickBooks. We purchased it. Our accountant is finishing up our tax return, and the next step is to look again at our chart of accounts and to enter data in the QuickBooks, and he's going to do some training with staff.
Wonderful. That's great. That's great movement. Glad to hear that. Thanks, Gwen. Why don't we go to Bob if you'd like to share?
Jill, we use a Excel spreadsheet, and I can't speak for exactly what Michigan United Conservation Clubs, one of our coalition members, uses, but they are our fiscal agent. But I presume it's pretty good because they're a big organization.
Yes, I bet you're right. Good. Any questions or anything?
No.
All right, great. Then let's move to Commissioner Adams, please, if you have anything. I saw you put a note in the chat. You don't have a bookkeeping system. You're not good at it.
No, I don't. I'm still working on it. You have to forgive me. I just come off of a treatment.
Oh, no worries.
But yeah,
no worries.
I'm still working on it and trying to learn, and I'm not going to give up. I'm going to ace this thing sooner or later. And I appreciate all of Freshwater Future's help.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much, Commissioner. And next on my screen is Bishop Jefferson.
Good morning, Bishop Bernadette Jefferson. I'm a part, my organization is content, but I'm a part of CBOP, and CBOP does the bookkeeping, and I think we just turned, I don't know if it's Excel or the other one that you mentioned, but I know that we're in the process of learning how to do that.
Okay, wonderful. Any questions at this point?
Now,
Okay, well, thank you. All right, let me see. Ashley, you're next on my screen.
Ashley lives here in Michigan City, Indiana. And yeah, right now we do not have a bookkeeping system. We've mainly been using Google Sheets, and I was kind of using Tiller, which kind of is connected to your account and shows you, transactions, and you can categorize in real time, but I haven't quite utilized it in a way that really works for us. It's there, but like it's still kind of confusing, and I do not have a QuickBooks subscription yet, but we actually wrote that in a recent grant, so fingers crossed. But I haven't done any tutorials, and then we have an accountant that he's been doing our annual statements, but really needing a better system. And I guess my question is just kind of where to start. And we're going to be transitioning out of our fiscal sponsorship into our own 501c3, and we're hoping to get that decision is said by January. So this is really like go time. So just knowing that we're in that at that process, what that's going to look like, what might be look best for us right now.
Excellent. Thanks, Ashley. That's really helpful. Excuse me. All right, and then Donna, would you share, please? If you're speaking, you are muted, Donna. Okay, maybe she is at a place where she can't unmute right now. So let's move to Kim. Could you share? And we can't.
Good
There,
morning.
hello.
So I'm Kim from West Haven House of Hope. I don't have a bookkeeping system. I'm using currently a Google template to track the expenses, and there's no revenue, so expenses.
Gotcha.
And we're pretty much just trying to learn all that I can. I'm struggling with the budgeting part, so I'm just here to learn what I can to get better at it.
All right. Well, that's great. I think I got everybody. And Donna, if you get to a place where you're able to share, just let me know. But thank you, everybody, for sharing. We have a great group today. And so I want to introduce my colleague, Stephanie Altrock. She is our accounting director at Freshwater Future, and she does all of our tracking of finances for us. So she is a wealth of information, really. And for those of you that are sponsored through Freshwater Future, she's the one providing reports and the material you've had to track your own income and expenses. So she's gonna, she wrote the presentation. I'm gonna go through it, and we're both gonna talk through things and answer questions for you. So this is a great opportunity to ask her things. The way she and I work together is I don't use bookkeeping software, but I look at everything that goes in and everything that comes out. So when an expense, for example, comes in, Stephanie and I make sure we agree, how does that get coded? So how do we want it to be pulled out in the future in our system? And the same with income. Is it a major donor? Is it an individual donor? Is it a foundation? Is it a corporation? So that all of the things we want to track, she can pull information by those categories. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to ask, oh no, I think I'm sharing the screen this time. So I'm going to start sharing. We have a short presentation. Oh, Alana, could you enable my screen sharing, please?
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you. Okay, so we're just going to talk through the basics. We're not going to go through how you do everything. But one of the things we want to put out there is that, you know, if you're just getting into this, like most of you are, and you're thinking of changing from say, a spreadsheet to QuickBooks, or a Google Sheet to QuickBooks, wherever you are, if you need some help in that process, Stephanie and I could probably help you through our consulting program. So that's the other thing is, this won't be the end today. If you need more help, we're happy to help. So I'm gonna go to the next one. So one thing that we know, and so Freshwater Future has about a $1.5 million budget. So we're tracking every penny that comes in and goes out. And at this point, if I say to Stephanie, can you pull me a report on the Mott Foundation? She can show me everything that's come in, when it's come in, and then everything that was spent under that grant and what it was spent for. And so that's what we're going for, right? Is creating a system in which we can easily, well, I say easily, she might not, we can easily get the information that we need, because we're categorizing it correctly when we put it in. And that's how you have to think of your accounting software. This is a database. All your accounting software is a database once you're out of a spreadsheet. It's a database that you can tell how, at the beginning, how you want to be able to pull data out at the end. And so that's the magic of accounting software, in my opinion. So, chart of accounts. Somebody talked about their chart of accounts, and that is the first thing you have to have before you can start your using software. In order to initiate QuickBooks, you have to know how you're going to categorize things. What are your income categories, the charts? What are your accounts? What are the expense accounts that you're going to be using? Because that way, everything will come out in reports in those categories. So this is an important step you have to go through before you get into your software, before you can put transactions in. And it's really important that you do this in a way that is going to last you for years. You can add to your chart of accounts, but it needs to make sense for you now and in the future. So if you have a bookkeeper you're working with, or an accountant doing your reports for you, they would be good people to help you with your chart of accounts, because they're seeing what's coming in and what's going out already. This is a sample chart of accounts. So, you know, you have cash sitting somewhere, hopefully in a bank. And then you would have an accounts receivable where you send out an invoice and somebody hasn't paid you yet. That's your accounts receivable. In our case, we have grants receivable. Once, for example, the Mott Foundation says, yes, we're going to give you a grant, that becomes a grant receivable for us until the money, the cash comes into our account. So you have all those incoming accounts. Fees for service, that's one we do when we do consulting, for example. If we get paid for those hours, then that would be a fee for service. We also break down our income in ways that we want to track, whether it's a board donation, it's an event, an individual, or what we categorize as a major donor. For us, that's anyone over 250. Corporate. So you can choose which ones are meaningful to your organization, and that's the important part. What categories of data are meaningful to you? And then you do the same thing on the expense side. If you have salaries, you list those out. If you're paying a payroll service, that's one of your accounts. We have items like travel and meetings, printing, postage, rent and utilities. So it's all the things that you pay that are meaningful for you to track. Any questions so far or clarifications? All right. Don't be shy. So when we're tracking those income and expenses, hopefully lots of income, we want, we enter vendors. So that's one thing you'll do in your software is you'll put in your major vendors. And as Stephanie puts here, that helps you know who needs a 1099. Stephanie, talk a little bit, if you would, about what's a 1099.
1099 is income that needs to be reported to the government. And that income is, if you're an independent contractor or a sole proprietorship, it's any income you receive over the year that is in excess $600 or more.
From one organization.
Yeah.
Right? From one source.
Yes.
So you as an organization have to send out 1099s if you're paying individuals 600 or more in a year. And so your accounting software will help you track that, so you know. So those vendors all go into your system. Excuse me. And then you similarly set up customers. So for us, a customer, for example, is a group we're doing consulting with. And if they're paying us for that consulting, then they could have an account receivable where we're collecting from them. We send them an invoice and they send us back a check. It also helps you know when those things are overdue. If you give somebody 30 days to pay and it's 29 days, you can know that you have something that might be coming due. And then job-specific reports. Stephanie, can you talk a little bit about this one too?
We use this a lot. We're very fortunate in that we have several major organizations that give us grants every year. But with those grants, there is attached a budget, and that budget consists of several line items, and they're attached, of course, to amounts. So you might have a line item for personnel and all the related expenses. You might have a line item for office supplies. You might have one for travel. So when the big donations come in, I set up what I call a job, which is usually just the name of the donor and then the grant period. So I have an idea of when we get to spend that money and how much we need to spend during that time frame. So then when an expense comes in, say we send someone to a conference, the bill comes in for their airfare. So then I can code it to travel. But because I set up a job, there's a drop-down choice where I can pick that specific job. So then when our grant period is over, or sometimes even while the grant period is happening, if we want to see, okay, how much of that $10,000 travel budget from XYZ company have we spent, I can run a report and it'll show me exactly how much of those particular travel dollars have been spent. So it really comes in handy, and it's very, very useful when you have grant money that you have to report on. Because when that grant period is over and you have to report to that funder, here's where I spent the money that you gave me, it totals all that up for you in all those different grant budget lines. So it's very, very useful.
And I think jobs are so critical, as are these other things, and this is why this is a database. So when you're in an Excel sheet, you basically have two dimensions, right? You have maybe your accounts down the left, and across the top, you have programs or something. But when you get larger, And you're getting all these different sources of income, and you have to report back to those sources of income. And you have to also know for your reporting to the IRS, how much of that came from small individuals, how much of that came from corporations. All of those things can be tracked in different ways through this. So you're essentially getting more dimensions, because you can have this job that tracks by who gave you the money. You can have your account name and number. You can have a whole host of things that allow you to essentially search and pull those out. And so that's where your software is so critical to keeping things in control. The bigger your budget becomes, the more necessary they are. And then financial reports. So if you've been working from spreadsheets, you may not have been giving your board more than that. They might just be looking at a spreadsheet. But what your financial software can do is give you reports, especially a balance sheet and an income statement, that are the standards that your board would look at, and that your leadership should be looking at, to know not only what's coming in and what's going out, but also what's in the bank. What do we still expect to come in? What do we owe out? So all of those things get tracked in these two reports. Whoops. Uh-oh, how do I wrap it? There we go. So balance, whoa. I'm out of control. Let me not touch anything for a second. So your balance sheet gives assets at the top, and your software will create all this for you, which is the beautiful part, right? That's the essential thing, is that this is an automatic function of these software. So you know what your assets are. You also know, if you have property such as a building, or if you have assets like computers and office equipment and all of that, that can all be in your assets. So you have a good picture of what the organization has. Then the bottom is your liabilities. And so in this example that Stephanie gives us, that could be accounts payable. So people we have received an invoice from, but we haven't yet paid. In this case, we have something called unearned revenue, which if you get foundation dollars, grants that go beyond your fiscal year, you may end up with some unearned revenue. Your accountant or whoever helps you with your end of year financials may say, okay, you have unearned revenue, which means you didn't spend it this year. You need to spend it next year. And so they'll help you with the process for that. But that is definitely considered a liability. And then you could have other things in there too, longer term liabilities. We have things like if you have staff and they have vacation time accrued, that becomes a liability because that's something you have to pay out. So this gives you a picture of the assets and the liabilities of the organization, and then at the bottom it will give you what your total liabilities and net assets are. Then the other one, and I think most of us are more familiar with this one, is your income statement. This tells you what has come in and what has gone out over a certain period of time. And we certainly like to look at it in this format, where we have a budget that was approved either at the beginning of the year or it was amended sometime during the year. And then you have what you spent this month and what you spent year to date, so that you're constantly looking at how much do I have, how much am I spending going toward that full year. So, and you'll notice that on the left, those are all parts of your chart of accounts. So once you have your chart of accounts in, this is kind of the information you're going to be able to get from your monthly income and expenses. So the two main accounting software are QuickBooks and Sage. Used to be known as Peachtree. Internally, we still call it Peachtree because that's what it was forever. But we use Peachtree just because we're rather complicated and we have a lot going on in our financials. But a lot of groups start with QuickBooks. And one good reason to do that is because it's essentially free through TechSoup if you are a 501c3. So if you're a C3 or you have a sponsor that's a C3, you should think about getting that. It has a small administrative fee. I mean, it might be $30 or $40, but it's very low cost. And it's a great package to start with. It really is. Lots and lots of nonprofits use it as well as for-profits. And so if you haven't made that decision yet, there aren't that many options out there. There are some online options, you know, that are newer. But if you're going to grow and work with, you'll have to work with an accounting firm. We work with CPAs who do our audit, for example. You'll want it in something that they're used to, and these are the two that they all use. QuickBooks, Sage is, yeah, like we said, usually bigger, more complex. You know, we have books for not just ourselves, but for sponsored organizations that operate within us as projects. So we are pretty complicated. I see Gwen's hand. Yes, Gwen, you have a question or a comment?
I do. Back to when you were talking about income and expense tracking, and that you sit with Stephanie to review how to allocate those expenses.
Yes.
Is that something, well, I'm having difficulty understanding how to track. Sometimes the expenses can be for more than one project or more than one grant. And how do you determine how to divide that up? How to divide those expenses up? Do you do it? Well, how do you do it? Is there some kind of formula, or do you track the expenses and then after a certain period you allocate it across projects? How does that happen?
So you can do it either way. You can do it by when you get a bill, you look at that bill and say, well, for this expense, you know, like 30% was to this project and 70% was to this project, and you can just split it up and ask your bookkeeper to do that. You can also do allocation. So you can say, well, I have 3 sources funding this project or set of projects, and I'm just going to allocate a third to each because it's all basically in the same, they're all paying for the same projects. So that is your discretion. I think we have gotten more into allocation as we've grown, because when you're trying to split up, you know, you don't want to have to split the hairs too closely. You need it to make sense, but you also need to be able to just work through it quickly. I'm thinking of things like our newsletter as an example. So you have printing and postage costs and some design expense for that generally. We used to have the Mott Foundation just pay for all of that. But now I think we split it among several because we have several foundations that pay for printing and postage costs, and they don't care what project it's for, right? They don't care that it's a specific piece. So in that case, we're probably just going to allocate it across the places. We have those line items in the budget. So for every grant that says printing and postage, we still have money, we might allocate that there. You have also the ability to just say, well, this time we need to put more toward this grant because that grant ends soon. And so we're going to use up some of that printing and postage money. So some of it is as much art as it is science, because generally they're not telling us, you know, which publication they want to pay for or those sorts of things. So you have some discretion to do that.
Thank you very much. That helps because I was questioning my discretionary power. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good, good. We wanted to just, oh, here it is, $39 for QuickBooks on TechSoup. They give a lot of other things. Almost every software you can get for just an administrative fee on TechSoup. So if you're a C3 and you haven't signed up with them yet, it's free to do so, and it's well worth it. I think it takes a couple days to be approved, but you will save thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. They, for instance, the whole, well, we get the professional G Suite for free. We get all of the Microsoft products. So just those for us are tens of thousands of dollars every time we go to update them. And
another big one is Norton Security, Jill. That's one that.
Oh yeah. Every year, Norton Security would get updated for free and across all your machines. So yeah, make sure you're using them. And then they also have hardware. So they have some refurbished and they have some new computers and different pieces of hardware. So they're well worth checking out.
Yeah.
Yes,
Leslie, what if you don't have your nonprofit status? Are you still able to get the discounted rate?
You can if you're sponsored by a nonprofit. So if you're sponsored, like for groups that are sponsored through us, you're a project of us. So you can order, we can order things for you because you're a part of us. And so you should be able to talk to your sponsor about that. If you're not, then probably you can't. If you don't have a sponsor and you're not a C3. I see a couple of hands. Sally?
Quick question. If your organization is in US and Canada, does TechSoup care that you're getting software to be used in Canada, or it just doesn't matter? Because the plan would be to be registered. Is TechSoup Canada? Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure that's how it is. Stephanie, do you know?
I don't know, but you could also purchase it and ship it if you had to. I mean, if it was something physical. You know, a lot of times when you purchase software or antivirus,
it's a license.
You know, it's just a digital.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, most of their stuff now is just digital.
Download. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Good question. Absolutely. And then I see a hand from Commissioner.
Thank you, ladies. Jill, you mentioned something that I ran into that kind of like scared me, because I'm thinking that TechSoup was thinking that I was possibly a large organization, and it kind of scared me when it was asking me for things that I could not answer. It was giving me, it was almost like a conflicting message as to making payments for things. I started getting all these emails from TechSoup, and it got confusing to me, you know, not being savvy and knowledgeable as to how it works. But I think I heard you put something in more clarity. And one other thing, as it relates to TechSoup, refurbished items and things like that. I received some notepads, and they weren't what I thought that they were. So is it possible to send things like that back when you receive them if they're, I don't know how something like that works.
I don't know, but we could look at that for you. We can look and see if things are returnable. I'm not
familiar with the return policy, but we can definitely look into that, Commissioner.
Okay. Thank you for future reference. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? I know we've gone over, and I apologize. We're over time, but happy to continue to answer questions if you have any more. And I see Ashley has her hand up.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been incredibly helpful. I'm wondering with the fiscal sponsorship, so would it be them helping us to get an account. And because in our situation, we will be a 501c3 on our own in the next few months, do we just kind of get that switched over? Would that be, if you know, would that be an easy process? They really are only like our fiscal pass through. They don't do any accounting. They don't do really any back end for us. So just wanted to see if y'all have any input there.
Yeah, it is a tough one with TechSoup, because if your current sponsor is willing to just let you buy through their account, that's the best thing, because you're a project of them, you know, there shouldn't be any problem, and then you'll be a C3 by the time you're no longer a project, and so that transfer should be just fine. Because it does take a little bit, and TechSoup will not move forward until you have your letter from the IRS. So, you know, it just depends on what timing you need that software for. If you need it now, I would ask your sponsor to help you. If you can wait, then you could do it on your own. Oh yeah, you're muted in case you had another comment. Great, okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you everybody for being on and hanging through all of that. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Stephanie and I, or one of us, so that we can connect you to resources or also help you to move forward.
So did you want to do
Thank
the
you all.
polling slide?
Oh, yes, if you wouldn't mind. I don't have one though.
Okay.
Do you have one?
Yeah, I just attached it to the end of the thing. I can
Oh,
screen
yeah.
share.
Yeah, go ahead and screen share, because I can't get it yet.
Okay.
If you would just do our usual poll, the first one will ask, and you just put this in the chat, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was your knowledge before this session? And then put a comma, and the second number would be what was your knowledge level after this session on the same scale. So if you wouldn't mind dropping that in the chat, that just helps us to improve our work, and also to let our funders know that we're helping folks. Excellent. Thanks everybody for doing that. Thanks for sharing about your organizations, and we hope we'll hear from some of you to help you move forward. But have a great week and month until we meet again for another one of these next month. So grateful for all of your work.
Thank you.
Grateful for you
Thank
guys.
you.
Stay safe and stay cool, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.